Welcome back to Second Floor Basement, your go-to source for anime summaries and recaps. Hit subscribe and join the legion of anime aficionados and otakus riding the wave. Get ready for a wild ride with the Unwanted Undead adventurer. Rentt Faina is an unskilled adventurer who has been stuck at bronze class for 10 years, but manages to scrape a living through hard work. While exploring the moon's reflection labyrinth, he stumbles across a completely undiscovered tunnel which he explores alone. Unfortunately, he finds himself in a dragon's lair and is devoured. Sometime later, Rentt finds himself mysteriously resurrected as an undead skeleton. As undead are blasphemous, Rentt cannot return home in case a priest destroys him. After killing another skeleton, he absorbs its spirit energy and remembers monsters can evolve with enough spirit energy. He thus makes it his goal to evolve into a ghoul, since ghouls do possess flesh, making it possible to disguise himself and return home to get help. After killing skeletons and slimes in one day, he gets used to his new body, regains his former magic skills, and slowly realizes he is becoming stronger and more skilled with his sword than when he was human. He finally evolves into a ghoul, giving him hope he can return home, but first he must relearn how to speak using his desiccated, half-rotted ghoul vocal cords. Regaining flesh lets Rentt fight stronger monsters and use more powerful spells, confirming he is much stronger than his human body. He witnesses a novice adventurer named Rentt and decides to stay hidden, but when Rentt unknowingly enters a dangerous area, he steps in and saves her. Having regained some speech, Rentt is able to explain what happened to him, so Rentt agrees to buy him clothes so he can leave the labyrinth. She returns with a black coat, boots, gloves, and an iron mask. The mask turns out to be a cursed item she unknowingly bought from a shady merchant that attaches to Rentt's face and cannot be removed. He decides to put up with it since he has to hide his face anyway and will ask a priest to remove it later. For her mistake, Rentt assists him returning home to Malt Village. They manage to pass the border guards by blaming his appearance and voice on the cursed mask. Once inside, Rentt sneaks away, not wanting to put Rentt at further risk of discovery, but will see her again someday. He decides to visit his friend Lorraine Vivi, a silver-class adventurer who recognizes him immediately. Lorraine, who is secretly in love with Rentt, decides he can live with her. She also acts as his proxy for guild matters. Rentt commissions a new sword from Clope the blacksmith that can tolerate his stronger magic. Meanwhile, Lorraine recalls in her youth how nothing interested her, even becoming a doctor and silver-class adventurer did not fill her with pride until a friend asked her to tutor Rentt, who was an iron-ranked novice. As her silver class was awarded as part of her doctorate, she realized Rentt was superior to her in actual adventuring. She decided to learn from him instead, which ultimately caused her to fall in love. Clope secretly recognizes Rentt, but decides to honor Rentt's desire for privacy until he is ready to ask for help. Rentt returns to the dungeon, hoping to evolve again into something more human-looking. There, he encounters a chef forced to start adventuring due to heavy debts. Deciding to help, Rentt takes him to the empty dragon's lair hoping to find undiscovered treasure, but the chef blunders into a teleportation circle. When Rentt follows him, they find themselves in a secret boss room facing the undead skeleton of a giant. Rentt defeats the giant and gives the chef its magic stone. In gratitude, the chef agrees to visit shops for Rentt and give him meals at his restaurant. Rentt notices another teleportation circle that leads deeper into the unexplored area. The chef, Loris, and his wife Isabel are grateful, so Rentt trusts them to keep his name secret. Rentt finds his mind affected by dark impulses and his mask's mouthpiece magically vanishes, allowing him to bite an unsuspecting Lorraine. Her blood returns his sanity before she angrily knocks him out. Awakening, Rentt heals her wound but admits he has cannibalistic urges. The mask, while still stuck to his face, now responds to his thoughts and can reveal his mouth or eyes at will. Lorraine realizes he has achieved existential evolution, and by drinking her blood, he actually evolved into a ghast. Rentt realizes if he keeps evolving, he could become a human-looking vampire. Lorraine agrees to help in exchange for letting her examine his body for academic research. As his sword is still not finished, Rentt borrows a temporary one from Clope so he can visit the unexplored area. Rentt notices Loris and Isabel have reopened their restaurant. Lorraine discovers Rentt is immune to poison, no longer requires sleep, and can keep his cannibalistic urges away with drops of blood. Rentt later learns he was actually popular at the guild, so if he tries to take a quest using his own name, people will definitely ask questions. Instead, Rentt re-registers as a novice but changes his surname to Vivi to pose as Lorraine's distant relative. He is surprised Guild Secretary Sheila Abars is still upset Rentt went missing. Rentt explores more of the unexplored area and discovers a mysterious woman guarding a room with a skeleton. At first, she attacks him for grave robbing, but after seeing his gassed body, she replaces his destroyed clothing with her own cloak. She also gives him an acacia map that will record everywhere he travels in exchange for keeping her location secret. Lorraine is impressed. The map is as valuable as a national treasure, and the cloak is magic resistant and stronger than armor. Rentt tries to visit the woman again, but finds she has sealed off the area. Most of the guild start to really miss Rentt, as most of them actually learned adventuring from him as novices. Rentt is given the opportunity to graduate from Iron Class to Bronze Class. He earns a perfect score on the written exam. For the practical exam, he is partnered up with swordsman Rise Dunner and sorceress Laura Satiai to compete with other parties to be the first to reach a specified room in the New Moon Labyrinth by sunset. Rentt spots the first obstacle. The maps are old and unreliable, so they buy a new one. Rise and Laura are shocked to be ambushed by another party, but realize such tactics are normal due to there being no rules, and swiftly defeat them with Rentt's help. After they leave, a nearby examiner is impressed Rentt noticed their attackers were also examiners tasked with making the exam more difficult. Guildmaster Wolf asks Sheila to keep an eye on Rentt as his sudden appearance and advanced skills are suspicious. Rentt's party reach their goal, a boss room. Another party also arrives, but due to their arrogance, Rentt lets them go first. Watching them be swiftly defeated confirms more examiners are nearby to ensure no one actually dies, making Rise and Laura more confident as they enter the boss room for their turn. The boss turns out to be a grand slime. Rentt opts not to fight so Rise and Laura can gain combat experience, and they eventually destroy the slime. As the first party to arrive, they are promoted to bronze and also receive potions and a carrying case. On the way back, Rentt shows Rise and Laura how challenging labyrinths can be, as one floor is a giant forest whose geography changes constantly. Rise and Laura depart but hope to see Rentt again. Sheila finally asks Rentt if he is actually the Rentt Faina who went missing. Rentt is unsure about telling her, so she signs a magic contract that will make her his slave for life if she reveals the secret. Once Rentt tells her everything, she decides to help him. Lorraine is suspicious and considers murdering Sheila to protect Rentt, but is eventually convinced of her good intentions. Sheila reveals novice adventurers have been mysteriously disappearing throughout the kingdom, and the guild is treating it as a mass kidnapping. Wolf suspects Rentt is the kidnapper, so Rentt decides to avoid the guild for several days while Sheila convinces Wolf he is trustworthy. While receiving his sword from Cloak, Rentt learns of a powerful new technique that might be the key to reaching Mithril class, but to use it, he will need high-quality equipment. The only problem is how to make money while avoiding the guild. Fortunately, Rentt encounters Ryantis from Tatsu village offering a job not sanctioned by the guild. Ryantis' sister is going to become a sacrifice to the Lake Lord in Tatsu village, where young girls are forced to be sacrificed so Lake Lord will not destroy the village. When they arrive, Rentt meets Ryantis' sister, Amiris, but she scolds Ryantis for bringing Rentt as she has agreed to be sacrificed. Rentt sees a couple of suspicious traders he does not trust. During the sacrifice, Rentt, Ryantis, and Amiris all watch as the Lake Lord appears. Rentt deduces it is actually an illusion spell cast by the traders. After defeating them, they admit they used the ploy to kidnap the girls and sell them as slaves. With all the girls rescued, Rentt receives payment and a surprise kiss from Amiris. As the traders only targeted young girls, Rentt concludes they are not involved with the missing adventurers. Sheila asks Rentt to find a dragon blood rose, even though the quest only pays 1 bronze coin. Dragon bloods are linked to a legendary love between a dragon and a human. Rentt agrees as they also make powerful medicine, and the quest was posted by the Malt Orphanage. Rentt learns from orphanage employee Alizé that headmistress Lillian has malaccumula, a disease that makes her sick when she uses magic and will kill her one day. Rentt also deals with rat monsters in their basement, but when the boss rat bites him, his blood tames it into his familiar, a power usually found in vampires, impressing Lorraine, who names the rat Edel. Lorraine discovers Rentt can eat normal food if it contains her blood. Rentt travels to Tarask Swamp, where being undead luckily protects him from the poisonous air. While discussing Rentt's work in Tatsu, which he refused to publicly take credit for, Sheila and Lorraine realize they do not know why Rentt is fixated on reaching Mithril class. While fighting a Tarask dragon, Rentt discovers Edel can use his magic. After defeating and harvesting the Tarask, Rentt finds the dragon bloods as well as a male elf. The elf, Isaac Hart, requires dragon blood medicine for his ill employer and offers Rentt a job to regularly deliver more dragon bloods to him. As Tarask dragons are famously difficult to defeat, Rentt secretly takes it to the guild's monster butcher, Dario. Rentt later delivers a dragon blood to Alizé and also gives extra ones to healer Umberto and herbalist Norman. At Edel's urging, the remaining rat monsters agree to protect the orphanage. Alizé decides to become an adventurer like Rentt, so he asks Lorraine to teach her magic. Lorraine decides to blow him up when he unintentionally suggests she is no longer young, but when he desperately showers her in compliments, she becomes embarrassed. Rentt learns Isaac works for the mysterious and powerful Latour family. As refusing a request from them would be dangerous, Rentt visits their mansion but learns from their security guard access is only granted by successfully making it through a constantly changing maze. His only clue to make it through being that the sun cannot help him. Rentt is confident as the maze appears quite small. However, after several hours, he becomes hopelessly lost. Rentt eventually makes his way to the center of the maze and speaks to a young woman and discovers she is a collector of magical items found in labyrinths. After receiving the same hint about not relying on the sun, he continues onward. He realizes the maze is actually teleporting him around. Once he finally exits the maze, he finds the mansion and the girl, who introduces herself as Laura, head of the Latour family. Rentt is then offered his reward. At first, he is drawn to a mana-controlled airship model, but the high mana consumption makes it impractical for scouting and is more like a toy. After accidentally summoning then defeating a golem, Rentt is drawn to a vial of vampire blood which, in theory, could turn him into a human-looking vampire straight away. Due to the uncertainty, Rentt takes the airship as his reward and forms a contract to keep supplying Laura with dragon bloods. Rentt is surprised to also be rewarded the vampire blood for free. Lorraine wishes he would not take the risk and remain as he is now, but is also aware of Rentt's burning desire to evolve and become a Mithril class adventurer. Wanting to understand his motivation, Lorraine finally asks Rentt why he wants to reach Mithril class so much. Rentt explains that as a child, he was very shy while his friend Jeanlin was the one who wanted to be an adventurer. One day, they were attacked by a wolf monster that killed his parents and her grandmother. Jeanlin died protecting him, but Rentt was saved and mentored by a Mithril class adventurer named Wilfried Riecker. Since then, Rentt has dreamed of reaching Mithril class so he can show Wilfried he made it. Lorraine allows him to drink the blood, which starts painfully mutating him. Days later, Clope works on an even stronger sword for Rentt. Alizé is pleased when Lillian starts to recover, and Rise and Laura form a party with Rena. Rentt finally awakens with a human appearance while Lorraine confirms he successfully evolved into some sort of vampire. Unfortunately, the mask is still stuck in place, but Lorraine is happy to see his face again. Rentt wants to see Wilfried, but hears rumors he left the country, plus he has not reached Mithril class yet. Lorraine decides if Rentt does leave, she will go with him.